Let's stay in the book of Psalms. It, it's a very deep and wide ocean, isn't it? I've just been thumbing through the Psalms to try and decide which one of these uh, do I want to dive into next. And as I was, thumbing through, and I started back at 51. It became apparent to me that one of David's themes was some form of the prayer, help me because my enemies are after me, have caught me, are plotting and planning to do me harm. He lived a life not very much like yours and mine on the physical level. And yet, I think maybe in some ways, on an emotional and spiritual levels, is quite like ours. Well, I settled on Psalm 63. So here we go. O God, you are my God. I earnestly search for you. My soul thirsts for you. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water. I've seen you in your sanctuary and gazed upon your power and glory. Your unfailing love is better than life itself. How I praise you. I will praise you as long as I live, lifting up my hands to you in prayer. You satisfy me more than the richest feast. I will praise you with songs of joy. I lie awake thinking of you, meditating on you through the night. Because you are my helper, I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your strong right hand holds me securely. But those plotting to destroy me will come to ruin. They will go down into the depths of the earth. They will die by the sword and become the food of jackals. But the Lord, the King, will rejoice in God. All who swear to tell the truth will praise him, while liars will be silenced. Up to the beginning. O God, you are my God. In modern times, for us, and I don't think there'd probably be anybody who is not a follower of Jesus that would ever click this thing up. So in some ways, we're all very similar in that regard. And the idea that we need to proclaim that God is our God. I grew up believing he was the one and only God, because he is the one and only God. When you became a Christian, I don't think, well, there are people, there's some fairly, probably in God's family, nobody's more important than the other, but some have greater influence than others. And some people with great influence who have had a great impact, God was not their God. And then he got a hold of them. They found him, and he became their God. My favorite of those, as you already know, is C.S. Lewis, Jack, as his friends called him. He made it wasn't a quick transition. It was a fairly slow transition from atheist, then to agnostic, and then to a believer. I wish I had memorized it word for word, but a paraphrase of what he wrote in his book, Surprised by Joy, which was his autobiography. Didn't cover his entire life, but he said when he was converted, he came into the kingdom kicking and screaming. On that night, he was surely the saddest convert in all the world. He had staked his life up to that point on the fact that he didn't need a God. When he discovered that God was undeniable and his need for God was also undeniable, it certainly changed him. And he didn't just think his way to Jesus. He was led to Jesus by friends who modeled Christ and who provoked him. Well, if you ever would like to get insight into my favorite author, you should read Surprised by Joy. It's a good read and not a long one. Okay. But there are a lot of us who the foregone conclusion is, well, yeah, God is my God. What? How? Yeah. Well, let's think about it. There are things in our world that promote the idea that we won't call them gods because that's so gauche. I mean, that's so antiquated, and it's so doesn't apply in century 21. Come on. And I think I think there are two real big lies that Satan depends on, and he's very effective at telling. And we as human beings seem to be very susceptible to this approach. The first one is somehow convincing us that he doesn't exist. I first read this idea in C.S. Lewis's book, The Screwtape Letters, probably the best book to start with if you ever want to get into C.S. Lewis. But he writes in that book as if he were a demon training a younger demon. And one of the chapters, one of the letters, it has to do with, it is much to our advantage, the demon worm. The Screwtape writes to his nephew Wormwood, is that if they don't believe we exist, it gives us so much freedom. So that's a big, well, it's a lie, but it's one of his tactics. And oh, by the way, year by year in the last 10 years that I have been paying attention to the surveys of religious beliefs and preferences in America, we are year by year by year, the number of people who believe in the devil has grown smaller and smaller and smaller. Still, a pretty overwhelming majority of people say they believe in God, but that it's not that same number of people who believe in the devil. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff in that. One would be, you know what, if you get whatever response you want as a surveyor with the survey questions that you construct. So there could be that, but there's some pretty reliable opinion surveyors who've come up with this conclusion. Well, okay, here's the second lie. You don't have other gods. God is your God. You're in there. It's all good. Now, why am I saying that? Because we, in our culture, there are so many things that are promoted that come after us and come at us, primarily through media, that, I'll just say it, they want to be one of your gods. Not big case G, but little case g, a god. In the Old Testament, in David's day, it was not uncommon for a Gentile city to have many gods. There was probably a primary god or goddess, and then there were secondary gods and goddesses. But they all got worshipped. They were idols. We would call them false gods. Hey, don't think for a minute that all the false gods have gone away. They haven't. I'm not against cars. I love cars. I'm grateful I have one. And I'm not against advertising. But you already know, you don't have to tell the truth in an advertisement. Not required. And there's some auto advertisements that they're simply not telling the truth, because one of the things that they are that their promotion hinges on is, if you buy this car, your life is going to be fulfilled and fulfilling. Think of the prestige of this luxury car. We're giving away. What's that poking at? Well, it's poking at our pride. Oh, and by the way, I don't remember in the last year at least, any of those luxury cars posting their cost. Occasionally they post, here's, if you want to lease this car. I was aghast. I won't even tell you the car, but it was a luxury car, and here was the deal. You had to make a $6,400 down payment and pay $799 a month for 24-month lease. I leased a car once. Was the first and last time I'll ever do that. I really think Dave Ramsey is right. It's not a lease, it's a fleece. But anyway, who would do that? I mean, who would fall for that? Well, two kinds of people, and sometimes they're the same person. One is people who are proud and shallow, and they think that by owning this car will raise their value as a person for all who see them riding in it or driving it, okay? These are not smart people. They may be smart in some ways, but they're not smart. And in the kind of smart that makes most difference and that matters the most. Others would be people who, they're lighting $50 cigars with $50 bills. I mean, these are people who've just got money to throw away, which I'm not one of them. You're not one of them. And you know what? I don't care how much money somebody's earning and getting and making. You don't have money to throw away. But see, the appeal is to our pride, and that the object that I'm trying to think of this, the least accusatory phrase to use, but I can't think of one, so I'll just say, whatever is the object of my highest aspiration, that would be my primary God. And things that fall beneath that, but are still the object of my ambition, they can be gods. Now, there's a lot of people who they really do love God, Jehovah, the one God, David's God, the one David said, God, you are my God. And I don't want to be mean, but they have other gods too. Well, okay, I've blown past my time. You know we'll have to come back to this. I'll see you next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.